Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of Ready Speaker, where I talk about movies and things that are happening around the world. Really been focusing on movies lately, and that's what I keep my focus on. So my name is Roland DeRucci. Thank you for being my guest on this YouTube podcast. And today's movie is The Menu, something that's come out recently. I think it's up for a few awards, if I can just look up here. I think it's up there. It should be up there if it isn't. So that's actually right away. I'm giving the thumbs up on it. There's the camera. I see I swoop it in, and there it is. So thumbs up on that. This stars Ralph Fiennes and Taylor Joy, Nicholas Hoult, Hang Chow, Janet McTeer, Paul Adelstein, John Leguizamo, who I really appreciate in this. And there's there's a bunch of other people here. That I'm really enjoying in this film. So let's get on the premise of this, and it's actually very recent. Some recent news about this sort of world. It's a culinary world. It's a bunch of rich people going to an exclusive island for a very exclusive dinner, and the head chef, played by Ralph Fiennes, is Slovak, probably Polish background, but it's Slovak. It should be. But to a W, so in the American English it goes to W. I don't know why. And he prepares a dinner for all these people. Now, much like COVID world has been upon us in the last few years, this is another film I think that really delves on people's personalities and sort of in isolation, and that's a real big thing with this. And I think who's the director on this? Director is Mark Millard. I think he wrote it. Seth Rice wrote it with Will Tracy, and Mark Millard directed it. All right, first off, great film. Cinematography, I think, is some of the best I've seen in a long time. I really appreciate it. I think the cinematographer for this is also the cinematographer for White Lotus and Game of Thrones. So there's a lot of that richness and layered into this. The isolation of the camera, the culture of the kitchen and the cooks and the guests. So it really focuses on how he treats these guests. These are very wealthy, famous, pretentious guests. So again, this is a critique, really, I think, at least for me, on expectations of the upper class and how restaurants sort of feed that moment of let's see, wealth. I said disposable wealth. I mean, they're eating. It's actually funny. I've made this comment before in other podcasts about the American ideal of wealth now is disposability. It's not necessarily accumulation, even though we think of people having all these numbers. It's not real numbers. It's stock portfolios and assets that aren't liquid yet. So it's a value on for me. It's people should have wealth on what they can throw away, and fine dining has gone in that direction in a lot of ways, where it's not really sustainable. And Noma closing down 2024, which I don't know when you're watching this, but Noma, one of the best restaurants in the world, who the owner actually happens to be Albanian, like myself. Not that I would have a restaurant, but he is Albanian too. And it's interesting that he's closing because he's saying, he said recently in the New York Times interview that, I think it was an interview or just a story, it might have been a press release, that it's just not sustainable to have high-end fine dining because the man hours required to make these very intricate meals, the sourcing of the food supplies, everything is gotten so expensive that it doesn't really pay, even if you're paying $500 a plate. And in this movie, it's $12.50 a plate. It's not sustainable. When I looked at it, first thing I said, wow, this is not a sustainable restaurant business. When you have like maybe 10 people a night, yeah, you're paying $12.50 a plate, but you've got all these people working as cooks and chefs, and you're growing your own food. So that means you have farmers working it, you have suppliers, you have people bringing in with boats. All these costs, no way to break it even. It's at a loss. So let's get into the film. So you have all these characters. You have Nicholas Hoult. He sort of brings us into the story and introduces the other characters. He's there with what you think at first is a girlfriend. There will be spoilers. Sorry, there will be spoilers here. With someone we think is a girlfriend. And he's a foodie, and he wants to experience, this cuisine. It's like a once in a lifetime thing for him. It's very expensive, so he's really going for it. And then you have all these other characters coming in. You have some bros in there, some rich bros who are liars on a hedge fund or something like that. And then you have John Leguizamo, who's playing a sort of washed up actor, still kind of famous, trying to get back into it, as he calls himself as a name dropping whore, which I found very funny. and he brings his assistant there, and they're going through all this stuff. You have Reed Birney, and I think he's sort of a wealthy politician sort of guy, investor, maybe banker, and he goes there with his wife. And you have all yeah, that's pretty much, I think, everyone that's there. And what happens during this film is that they're essentially fed their Last Supper. The chef has decided, and the staff have decided that they were going to make this perfect meal for these people, and these are loathsome people, and that everyone's going to die in the end. So I know that's sort of like a weird thing, but it's a thriller, but it's a think piece at the same time. And that's what I want people to, when they see this movie, it's really, really interesting how it plays out. He's sort of, the way the story's written, he's really going after everybody's vice. And it's almost like the deadly sins. And there's 6 tables. So I'm probably missing some people here of who's sitting at the tables. There's 6 tables. And I think, at least to me, that applies almost to like the sins. And Ralph Fiennes' character, the chef, he's the 7th sin in a way. Or at least he's baptizing himself of that sin, of vanity, of misogynistic. All these things come to play. And it's that culture of restaurant culture that's played up here. Being almost a militant, it is actually a very militant setting in that kitchen. It's a very militant relationship with the other people in the kitchen, and everybody. It's putting on a show for everybody in the audience, which is the people having a meal, and it's kind of interesting. Again, I keep saying that, but it's really interesting the way it's a show for them. They're outside of the story, and then they get into the story, which is really, really interesting. Well done, well executed. I have some peeves about filmmaking, and this film just didn't really just fall into those traps. But one of my peeves, it's just a peeve I have. It's not a big deal, but I kind of hate when people are out of focus for an extended period of time, even though they're interacting in the dialogue. You say with 2 people or 3 people, and a lot of films maybe they don't get the coverage, maybe it's an artistic choice, I don't know, but they'll do a shot and that person just stays out of focus for a while, and they're speaking, and it's kind of annoying because I know you're focusing on the reaction of the other person, but my eyes generally go where the sound is. I think that's just a natural reaction. You don't really, when you hear the sound, you don't look the opposite way to see who else is hearing that sound. You kind of go with that sound. So my eyes automatically go to that, and I have to force myself to look in the other direction, which I don't know if that makes sense. This film sort of stayed away from that, and it really did some nice cuts, some beautiful sound design. It's a product, I believe, of COVID, where it's a very the cast is in a very controlled environment. It's pretty much in one space. They have some other shots, but it's pretty much in one space, and it really goes towards that distance from the rest of the world, and they're here. It's Knives Out, The Onion Glass also, I think, did this sort of a boat to go somewhere else, to be isolated. Triangle of Sadness, which I reviewed also recently. That's also a great film, I think, great independent film, and also going into a place of isolation to see wealth, to see decadence, to see wastefulness. In my opinion, of like what's wasteful, and this film really plays on that. I will say that some of the characters here are really involved, and they sort of like just go all in with their character work. Ralph Fiennes is just friggin' amazing in it. There's so much nuance that he's doing, so many reactions, and it's a funny film. There's actually some really funny moments, and he's just, the way he delivers things. I mean, he always delivers. He has this natural way of speaking, and this it's a wryness. It's really something to watch. But he brings there's levels of annoyance. There's admiration. There's caring. There's empathy. There's all these things that play into what he brings in every line that he brings without saying it. So if you're gonna watch like a great acting film, I mean, this is definitely one. If you're going to watch a great film that really deals with films that everything has a place, that everything's intentional, this is a film like that. There are little nuances and little bits. If you watch it twice, I watched it twice. I was going to watch it a third time, but I watched it twice. And there are moments in this film that you pick on these little details that appear later on, and it just makes it a more solid story. It just makes it self-contained. It makes it created this world. I don't really need to know much more than what was taken out for each, displayed for each character. But what I do know, I know it's a full world. I sort of get where they're going. I get their beginning, middle, and end. And even some things are creepy. There's a couple of creepy parts with the characters, and it can be hurtful. It can be like, oh my God. You get these moments, these little inner gasp moments, which I think work. I think some of the, and again, this is, everyone's, they know they're going to die. And they find this out, and there's humorous parts of it. There's frustration, there's panic, there's all those things. Everybody's reaching those moments until the end, and it all just sort of blows up. And I just admire that. I just think there are so many great. Anya Taylor-Joy, who plays Margot, is great in it. There's a lot. She has great lines on her face. So they do all these beautiful close-ups of her and her reactions and sort of how she's digesting everything that's happening. I know, restaurant movie, digesting, but she's digesting everything that's happening, and there's thought behind the characters. And again, that's something that I think I don't see in a lot of movies. There's no thought behind what they're bringing. And I think with this film, there is a lot of thought. The actress Hong Chow, who plays Elsa, great delivery on her part. I really enjoyed her. She plays the host of the restaurant, and she seats people. She makes sure everybody is where they need to be. I really enjoyed what she brought to it. I thought she had a very interesting take, and she was grounded in that character, and there was a lot of stuff in there. Again, very little of the characters because it's really just in one world, but I feel like she's rounded, like she knows where she is. She knows where she belongs as a character. You have Janet McTeer, who plays Lillian, a food critic. You have Paul Adelstein, who plays Ted from their magazine, and they have a great rapport with one another, being these elite two people who are very into fashion, into being catered to, into being supported, into being never really wrong. And they have some great moments in there. John Leguizamo, again, I'll come back to him. He made me chuckle. From what I read, he based his character on Steven Seagal. Is like this washed-up actor who was kind of arrogant. I just don't think Steven Seagal could ever be as funny as John Leguizamo is in this. I think he nailed it. The way he had this swagger when he walked in. He's doing these big lines, like over the top to get attention. He's doing all these little things that, again, I know his story. Or if I don't know all of it, I feel like I know it. And he definitely knows his story. So the work is done. I mentioned that in a few reviews I've had of are the actors doing the work, and that's the investment in the character, the development, understanding the backstory, creating the backstory if you need to, creating elements or little tangent points, quirks, anything like that. I think he's one of those people who does his work, and I think actually everybody here, I think, did their work. Nicholas Hoult as Tyler, this really over-the-top foodie who is just throwing things like, I know what this is, I know that kind of cut, I know this kind of flour, what's the base of this, and he just knows everything about cuisine, and it's annoying, and he is so enamored with it, he's so in love with it, he doesn't care. And that he does this really quirky bit of business with that at first is kind of annoying, but that's the investment of the character. The investment of the character is that he is over the top. He's one of those guys who just knows everything about food and will explain to you what you're eating and why you're eating it and where it's sourced and all that other stuff. Meanwhile, what you want is a freaking good meal. And I think that's really interesting, the way he really went with it. Everybody. It's probably one of the best movies I've seen this year, Triangle of Sadness. Great movie to come. I think it's very. They sort of like they're in the same waters. One's an island, one's on the boat, but they're in the same waters. I think it's really interesting the way they're both shot. That is a very independent film. This is, I think, $15 million was the budget on this film. Well worth it. Well worth the watch. Who's ever watching my channel, I would say watch the movie. It's really beautifully done, well acted, well thought out. Beginning, middle, end of a movie. I felt satisfied at the end of the movie, like a good meal. I felt like things really came across okay, and I think that's what's important. And I got 2 or 3 people to watch it already, and I've already spoken to some other people who've seen it, and they're like, "Wow, what a great movie that I really enjoyed." I'm not gonna say it's the best. Maybe it's not the best. I don't know. But it's, to me, it's fulfilling, and like a good meal, this sort of, is there, and you enjoyed it, and maybe you want a little more, but that's okay. That's a good meal. I never walk away too full. I always walk away a little hungry, and that's not me wasting. I take small plates too. I actually fill my own plate, so I put my own portions in. Just so you know. So that's my short review of this film. And I played the trailer in the background, sort of. So you probably saw that. See it if you can. Enjoy it. I think you will. If you really enjoy good acting, good story writing, characters that are developed and grounded, and they sort of give back to you. And that's really it for the review. So I am saying, well, I'm signing off. And I've been doing this recently. I've had a couple of health scares. Had another health scare in December 2022. Almost lost me again, guys. So I'm still around. So keep watching my channel. Subscribe if you can, because who knows when I might not be around. And I'm still here. And I tell everybody that I go to sleep, happy, thinking about my day, thinking about what I experienced that day. And I'm happy I lived another day. And when I wake up, I can start another day. So those are my 2 happiest points of my day. That I finish the day and I can start another day. And until that ends, I'm around and I'm talking about films, and hopefully maybe I'll talk about other projects. If you want to be on a show with me, send me a message. I'll gladly take anybody. We'll talk about things. We'll talk about storylines, or why I like or dislike something, or why you like or disliked it, and we can have a nice argument, friendly fire, and no one dying, but friendly fire, and we can work through it. All the best. Again, Roland Rucci from Ready Speaker. Have a good night.